Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome and hello. My name is Max. I'm a community manager at a company called Webflow, and I'm excitedly anxious to talk to you today about microsites, or as my potentially catchy title says, microsites that move the needle, surprise and delight in your microsite. Before I kick things off, though, let me introduce myself a little more formally. Again, I'm Max, sometimes Maxwell. I miss RDO. I care about online privacy and security, and I heart all things Apple. Um, I was born and raised in Iowa. I still live in Iowa, in fact. And in the mid 2000s, I followed an older, much more talented brother into the world of design. And while I'm a designer by trade, I really consider myself a generalist of sorts. And um, my background isn't all that unique per se, but I do like to talk about the journey itself because I find that really interesting, and I think it resonates with a lot of folks. Early on in my career, I worked on both print and digital design teams at local Iowa-based companies, and really like any new young employee, I just really wanted to put in the work. I didn't know exactly where I wanted to grow or what I wanted to be when I grew up. But I knew I loved design, and I've always been a constantly curious person. So I really just figured that, just put in the work and enjoy the journey. Well, some years later, and what I'll call a transition point in my career, I happened to cross an opportunity to shift gears a little bit. So I was going to be going from a individual contributor designer to a catch-all marketing strategy and salesy person. And at the same time, going from a physical office to the beginning of my stint as a remote employee. Now, I was able to. It was interesting to me because I was able to stay in the world of design, by way of the companies themselves, but at the same time, I was really able to own in on my skills and strengths as a generalist. I was fortunate enough to manage the design community over at Designer News. I helped build a refreshed foundation for advertising and monetization at Dribbble, which is arguably one of the biggest, most well-known creative communities of designers online. I I started the events and offline marketing efforts at Abstract. I really just I followed opportunities as they arose. Again, I was and still am a constantly curious person. So really keeping with that theme, I found my way to Webflow, where I've been a longtime fan and advocate, and now I'm officially part of the Webflow team and the marketing team specifically. And in my role is ultimately focused on really just trying to help provide platforms and resources for Webflow's online communities to interact, and at the same time uh, helping provide value and understanding what it means to be part of the community. And if you're not familiar with Webflow, I'll certainly talk about it a little bit more so today. But we really like to describe it as a modern way to build for the web. So Webflow it empowers designers or really anyone that is that has that same creative interest to build for the web using a completely visual canvas. So that's enough about me. That's quite a lot at this point, but I like to provide the context because I really think it helps provide certainly perspective on me and my background, but also a lens for this talk. And really this idea of the marriage between design and community and angling your efforts that direction. So that said, let's continue on to microsites. And pausing for just a moment here to talk specifics. So definitions can vary, of course, but for the purposes of today, I'll describe them as an individual web page or small grouping of pages that are meant to live on their own and act as a tangential piece of a company campaign. Now, I would say the easiest thing to remember here is that really microsites are really they're built to tell a story. So the first question, of course, is going to be, well, what about landing pages? Well, I'm a big analogy person, so think of it this way. think of landing pages as more like a technical IKEA manual. They're really meant to capture your attention for a very specific task, where microsites are more like a choose your own adventure book, right? You might read it once or twice or three times, and likely your path through the book is different each time. Now, the analogy might not totally land, but in sticking with the tell a story theme, I think you get the idea, and I'll kind of lean on that throughout this talk. So, how have they evolved? Well, really, this is generally speaking, but in the past, microsites lived on an island of sorts, right? They might have shared a similar visual aesthetic to the main website, but almost looked like a generic, grocery store version of the real thing. They may have been built to quickly coincide with a paid campaign, but not given a ton of thought or effort, and mainly that's just because these microsites take time to build, right? And lastly, they were, for the most part, they were something that bigger, probably cash-rich companies did for fun, right? And again, that's kind of generalizing, but that helps kind of provide perspective to the present. So today, I would say microsites live within a brand's home. So the obvious, like a subdomain, for instance, or what I'll call vacation home. So like a vanity URL, and really the big kicker here, the big difference, I guess, in today's microsites as compared to those of old is mainly one thing, and that's it's opportunity. And more specifically, a company's or a brand's literal opportunity to create full-fledged immersive microsites, right? Keeping up with the analogies, let's take Disney Plus, for instance. New streaming service by the Disney company. Disney and all of its subsidiaries are they've always been great at storytelling, right? But more recently, advancements in technology have really created opportunities for the directors and the producers and the actors and everybody involved to create movie quality effects on seemingly TV-esque budgets, and I guess that's my point. Same with microsites, right? The tools, the resources, the processes, the things involved to create microsites have really evolved immensely, even in the past few years. So why do they matter, right? Piggybacking on the idea of opportunity above, let's just kind of snowball this. So if more people have the opportunity to build them, then more people have the opportunity to consume them, right? So in a cyclical fashion, this probably means that more microsites means more storytelling, which means more community involvement. Okay, it's that snowball idea that's really what matters most. And again, with your community in mind, these are the folks that want that storytelling, that they want to consume more, right? So with that sorted out, what is a microsite these days? Let's talk about community over customers. Generally speaking, and I obviously have strong feelings about this because my ties to community and being a community manager. Community, generally speaking, is it's really continuing to make waves in the broader tech industry. Why? Well, companies are finally realizing that people who pay for your products or services can and probably should be more than just customers, quote unquote. And what I want to do is really explore the difference between customers and community, and then highlight why appealing to the latter is going to be far more important in the long run. So the lines can get really blurry here. There's a lot of gray area because there certainly is some overlap, but let's try to define it this way. Customers are someone who transacts, and community is someone who participates. An example of a customer might be somebody who signs up for an account or buys an item, or more or less anybody who gives you information about themselves. Again, that they're fairly straightforward, but it's that transaction that occurs that's most important there. Now, examples of a community member might be somebody who actively talks about you on social media, or creates videos about your brand or your company. Maybe they publicly recommend you to somebody else online. These aren't always as straightforward, but again, they participate in some facet. So you can see how customers can and sometimes might stay customers. They keep buying from you and transacting, and that's it. And that's great. But at the same time, you can also understand how customers might graduate, for lack of a better word, to become part of your community, right? And we used to think of these as like, oh, they're loyal customers, and it's like, well, certainly yes, but it's like really graduating to that next level or that next stage is the important piece here, because if you're talking to your community, you're really talking to the people that are your biggest fans and advocates and evangelists. I like to think about it this way. Again, analogies here. If time is arguably our most valuable resource, as humans, we all have a limited amount of time per day, and the folks that are part of your community want to participate with you and with others, then it's easy to see why it matters, right? Time is valuable, and they clearly value you, right? It's fairly straightforward. So, if you aim to build a microsite that really talks to your community, the likelihood of you growing said community is substantial. With microsites defined and community over customer noted, let's go ahead and dive into a few themes here about creating microsites that really talk to your customers specifically and provide that surprise and delight. So, theme number 1: be mindful the journey. I noted previously about how microsites were akin to a choose your own adventure book, and the journey here is the whole reason a visitor and hopefully community member would quote unquote read your book, and the journey in question very likely will go beyond your microsite, right? That's kind of the point, defining microsite. Part of that literal definition is it's a small piece of the broader story, right? So the microsite hopefully is focused especially on two things, as part of this journey, providing the narrative. So, why are they here? Why should they care? And then on top of that, kind of explaining some of that reasoning, right? So you're giving them hopefully more than words. You're giving them interesting copy, of course, but it's photos and videos and interactions and all these other pieces. So my first example for being mindful of the journey is a website by Chipotle. Certainly a familiar name, but Chipotle is a chain of fast casual restaurants that specialize in tacos and burritos. This microsite specifically is trying to highlight Chipotle's focus on sustainability. And even more so, what they're really trying to do is bring you, the audience, into the equation. So let's take a peek at the live site. And, as you can see right from the get-go, they're trying to provide this heartfelt theme. Can a burrito change the world? There's a video right offhand. If we kind of scroll down, we can see it's showing this farm and talking about sustainability immediately. There's this calculator that's obviously trying to make the microsite a little bit more interactive. They're talking about together we can make an impact. You can really see how they're just they're trying to bring you the user, but really the community member into the fold. Obviously, some great social proof there with Bill Nye the Science Guy. But yeah, you can really see how ultimately what Chipotle is trying to do is make this about them, certainly, but really it's more so about you, the community, the people that love Chipotle. Moving on, theme number 2: be brief and over-communicate. Okay, so you're probably thinking, well, you're sort of talking in circles there. Well, kinda. Just follow me here. Less is more. More often than not, I, like many others, lean on this expression, less is more. Whether it's design or project planning or even writing an email, less tends to feel like the right way to go. Not necessarily because I always believe it, but because really less provides a general direction or goal to strive for, right? If you're able to focus your effort and be brief in your explanation or your design or your copy, et cetera, et cetera, really the likelihood of you getting your point across to a wider audience is probably typically higher. Thus, in your microsite, less is often more means more is understood. At the same time, more can be more. You said, I noted specifically over communicate, right? Well, here's the kicker. These aren't necessarily hard and fast rules. More is more can work, really. And in fact, going the more is more route is likely a wild card of sorts. So here's what I mean. Usually you think adding more means adding complexity, and adding complexity adds to the confusion and frustration. Well, if you're able to sort of stitch together a reasonable amount of information such that you're providing more to the narrative and storytelling, then you do have an opportunity to bring the reader closer, figuratively and literally, kind of noted in that journey, above. Thus, your microsite, with your microsite, more is more. It means more is available, right? It sounds obvious, but again, for these fans and advocates and evangelists, they really want more. With this theme, let's take the example of a company called Italic. Italic describes themselves as a new way of shopping, particularly one that gives you access to hundreds of quality goods from the same manufacturers as top brands for up to 80% less. So, kind of a direct-to-consumer route, but in a slightly different fashion. This microsite specifically talks about one of their candles, and really adds to this narrative of obviously like the less is more mentality, but also the more is more. So let's take a look. So here's the live site. A really interesting, just right from the get-go, it's, catchy headline, why we lost money on our candles. The cursor is the flame specifically. So it's this idea of lighting the candle. There it goes. Interesting, obviously opening to whatever is in store here. Cool interaction there with the graphics kind of coming into view. And really you can see right from the get-go what they're trying to do here is, they're telling the story of this candle, right? That's been sold out. And certainly they have a call to action there at the bottom with providing an email. But as you sort of scroll along here, you can see that they're really breaking down. They're providing you with some behind the scenes. They're providing pricing. They're talking about losing money. They talk about the launch and selling out in 3 days. It's they're talking about, again, pricing. It's this journey. They literally say and use the word journey, but you can tell, like in this case, more is more works, right? It's showing behind the scenes. It's talking about why they care. It's talking about their products. But here's the funny thing: they're not pointing me to another product. They're providing this broader narrative, because really what they're trying to do isn't necessarily sell you on the candle. They're trying to sell you on the company, which is very interesting. Theme number 3: build trust, open the door. People's attachment to music, and specifically the artists themselves, has arguably grown tenfold, in the digital age. Accessing a band's entire music catalog is easy enough, with Apple Music or Spotify or the like. But on top of that, access to the band members themselves, is readily available. You take TikTok or Instagram or Twitter or you name it. The relationship between fan and musician is much more of an intimate one these days. And the fan's attachment then to the musician or to the band, grows therein, right? Why? Well, it's like the theme. The musician builds trust and opens the door. But it's not always that easy, right? As consumers, an over-adoption of technology has made us smart and savvy, right? We understand how things work, or how they should work. So for example, you shop online, you understand how things get added to a cart, you understand there's a checkout process, you understand that there's you're presented with billing and shipping information, etc. Like literally how it works, right? At the same time, we also understand, have a detailed understanding of why it works that way. So again, taking that example of shopping online, we're savvy enough to understand that, we understand how to how to jump in and out of a cart to, if you forgot something, or how to find a promo code by probably signing up for an email list first, or maybe like why you would sign up for an account before you actually purchase something to then get a discount. There's all these things that we understand the why, and we're more savvy in that sense, right? So from multiple perspectives, we're slowly but surely becoming too dangerous for our own good, and that's not a bad thing. What it just means is we're becoming more particular, and I guess it's really just important to realize that for our decision making. So, most folks can spot BS online, without much effort, whether it's, scammy sites or fake reviews or bogus claims, the list really goes on and on. And so this idea of building trust and opening the door, we used to heavily rely on, and we still do to some extent, but testimonials and reviews, right? Great place to start, but as anyone who's shopped online knows, they feel like they can be gamed, right? Social proof is the next great step, right? The folks who post positive comments about you or your company or your product, these people that are part of your community, really, figuring out how to take those comments and build it into the narrative of the microsite and your story as a whole, and telling their story is really probably the more important piece here. Testimonials and reviews are great, but really that social proof and that telling their story is arguably more important. So the example I want to provide here is a couple different music festivals. So, Bonnaroo and Lollapalooza and Austin City Limits, these are annual multi-day, music and arts festivals with attendees that attend on an annual basis because they have this attachment and this trust in the festival itself, right? And the people that go to the festival and being part of that community. So if we jump over to the live site and take a quick look here, you can see 4-day tickets are sold out. Obviously, that's always an interesting thing from my standpoint. It's like this highlight front and center, sold out. Well, the reason that they do that, obviously, is to kind of highlight the supply and demand issues. Certainly they might open more tickets up, but kind of scrolling through the site here, we can see pretty quickly how building trust. They have, again, the ticket information front and center. They talk about what's new at the Roo this year. Again, obviously, this is meant for folks that attend multiple times a year. Kind of scrolling through, they talk about music and entertainment and camping and plazas and this premium suites and so much going on, and drool-worthy food. It really goes on and on. But the point here is really this idea of social proof in this sense really comes from the imagery and the videos and the happiness from the attendees of these festivals. All right, so theme number 4, make it interactive, make it relatable. In the same vein as my Disney Plus analogy about advancements in technology on the grandiose scale, those same advancements apply on a small personal level as well. Without fail, every year we can expect a new iPhone that's 50% faster, 50% brighter, 50%, you name it. And these devices that fit into our pocket are on par with those that sit on our desk, right? And essentially, we live in a virtual sandbox where the world is our oyster, and thus there's almost this expectation that sites, but probably microsites especially, need to be interactive. Whether that's the styling specifically, or how it's constructed, or animations on the page. It's almost a prerequisite these days. Now, that said, as the saying goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him or her drink it. And relating that to this case, while interactions bring an incredible wow factor, they don't necessarily seal the deal, so to speak. And really, you need to figure out how to marry both of those. Being able to make it interactive and relatable, and more specifically, meaning you want to build something that both feels familiar to the audience in your community, but also comfortable in order to bring it full circle. At the end of the day, your audience needs to envision themselves in your shoes, so to speak. Whatever you're trying to provide, right? And But the big kicker here, that relating it back to that saying about the horse, it's like they need to get themselves there, right? You can't just convince them. They need to convince themselves and drink the water. Taking a look at our example, Attentive is they describe themselves as an innovative platform to grow subscribers and deliver relevant messages, right? So the microsite in question here is called Texts We Love, and it's a showcase of sorts. You can see it's meant to really describe obviously how the best brands that use this product use it in a way for fill in the blank text messages to engage mobile and consumers and drive revenue. Now, if we take a look at the live site, I think it's a little bit more relatable here. So jumping over. You can see Text We Love right offhand. They have this kind of cool interactive piece up top where their sort of hero messaging there is sort of this kind of like fill in the blank to get you to understand that it can be used for all sorts of engaging messages. As you scroll down the page too, you can see that this is actually, it's a directory. It's got a filterable list of tags on the left, and on the right is just it's a showcase of all these companies that have used the product to send messages to their customers and in their community. And really, I think that's the interesting piece here. Is again, it's marrying both the interesting aspects of an interactive website, but also relatable aspects, because let's just pretend that I am a direct to consumer company and I'm curious about loyalty messaging. Well, boom, I filtered it down. Let's look at this one in the middle here, Lens Direct. Oh, this is cool. You can understand why Lens Direct loves to use Attentive. There's a case study you can link to. There's even these bits about being able to like these messages and kind of have this like filterable directory that adds to the popularity. It really does a great job about, again, marrying these two concepts of both making it interactive and making it relatable. So last but not least, theme number 5, find the right inspiration. As obvious as this sounds, you should not just copy or imitate others directly, be it your competition or a random business entirely. And it's not because it's wrong to blatantly steal, but because in all likelihood, the approach that they use it really won't mesh with the approach that you use, right? The design aesthetic, the voice, the tone, the typography, the punctuation, you name it. Stealing these things directly simply won't look or sound like you, and your audience and your community will notice, right? So taking the time to collect inspiration from multiple sources over time might mean the difference between an okay microsite and a great microsite, because obviously you have this inspiration to pull from, right? So it's not like you necessarily need to get hung up on what's the criteria or how many sources of inspiration should I pull from. The concept here is just keep collecting, right? Just whatever you see that you like, just collect it. And there's certainly a number of great tools to help with this. And there's two in particular that I personally like using. One is called Notion. The other is called My Mind. Again, there's a number of others, but I like those in particular. And for me, anytime I see something I like or that looks interesting or I want to come back to, regardless what it is, throw it in Notion, throw it in My Mind, and I've built this repository over time that I can just kind of reference at any point. Adding to that, and I guess probably part of the bigger reason you want to just keep collecting is because I like to recommend a technique of sorts that I'll simply call the Frankenstein approach. So you've collected all these things, and now you want to pick and choose pieces of all those things and put them together to make your thing. So that's the difference, right? So it's not like you're stealing this entire piece, but you're taking a piece of that, of this project and a piece of this website and really making your own whole, which then obviously looks and sounds and feels like you, right? So as an example, there's all sorts of these, but I'm just going to kind of highlight 3 sources of inspiration I like to reference. The first is Webflow and the Webflow Showcase, which is really just it's it's a directory of our popular projects that our community has submitted, and it's projects and websites that are built using Webflow, right? The second is called One Page Love. It's a directory of single page websites or templates or resources, and that's a great one for if you're trying to be brief and simple and kind of just focus on like a single page website specifically. And then the last is Dribbble. Probably the leading destination to find and showcase creative work online, and it's the home of a ton of global designers, and has a great source of inspiration to pull from in terms of themes and trends over time. So if we jump over to the Webflow showcase, I just want to quick highlight. You can kind of see some projects that were submitted here. We're sorting by popular right now, but you can notice how you can sort by animation or interactions or templates, and really the thought here is just to let you browse, right? So if we click into one of these, let's view this project. Snog Productions, you can see obviously this little embed is the live site itself, but if we go into the project details, what we can also see is how they describe it, some tags, some comments, and really, as you can imagine, a lot of this is really just like, why is this interesting? How can it be shared? Where can I see more? We're really just trying to provide a place for designers and obviously folks that use Webflow, an opportunity to dig in and view these sites and view these projects more intimately. So wrapping up, microsites that move the needle. You can tell my positioning and my love for community and design. I angle more towards this idea of empathy and the person and the human behind the scenes, as compared to the analytical side of literally moving that, or maybe metaphorically moving that needle. And really, if I had to put a single bow on all of this, it's pretty simple. Community matters. One last story here. Discord, one of the biggest online communities, especially for gaming enthusiasts, reportedly has 140 million active users as of December 2020, and it's a massive community that has driven valuations upwards of $10 billion, and most recently found a new minority investor in none other than Sony. And really, what's the moral of the story? Well, again, community matters, and for some, it's quite literally paying off. But the big thing that I would just want to note is, kind of pumping the brakes for a second, is not all communities need millions of users or billions of dollars to be deemed a success, right? Arguably, some of the greatest communities that exist today are merely just a few hundred folks, and likely were formed to draw attention, not drive a profit. And this seemingly new community wave it's really essentially a new chapter in this book that we call the internet. The large open public forums on social media really defined the last decade, and I strongly believe that immersive, intimate conversations amongst community really will define the next. The last thing I'm going to leave you with is, if you're curious to learn more about, how to use Webflow to build microsites, I strongly encourage you to sign up for free and start today at webflow.com. Every single website that was shown today, outside of Dribbble and One Page Love, they're happy Webflow customers and community members. They were all built with Webflow, and we'd really love to see what you can create too. So with that, I'll say thank you, and good morning, good afternoon, and good night.